Now, the chapter that we are looking at is trigonometry, and trigonometry deals with, thank you, trigonometry deals with triangles. And so I actually call this one, and we have a lot of questions that I call triangle questions, because the main strategy that's going to help you figure things out is drawing a triangle. In this example, we've got a point -1, -4. Is a terminal point of an angle theta in standard position. So if I just draw what that means, 2, 3, 4, I've got the point -1, -4. Angle in standard position, this would be theta. And we have to determine the exact values of the 6 trigonometric ratios for theta. So that means sine theta, cos theta, tan theta, and then all the reciprocal ones as well, cosecant theta, secant theta, and cotangent theta. Now, if I want to find sine of theta, if I had a triangle, I know that sine of theta is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So this is a triangle question because we need to draw a triangle. And the first thing we have to decide is where we're going to draw a triangle. And this is where your idea of reference angles really comes into play. For this point on the terminal arm, I'm going to draw my triangle, and I'll draw it in black here, back to my x-axis. And the reason you always go back to your x-axis is because that's where your reference angle is. Your reference angle is always the angle between the terminal arm and the nearest x-axis. So a mistake that students often make in this question is they're like, ooh, I'll draw it back to the y-axis and make my triangle in the wrong place. Or I'll just draw a triangle without drawing my axes. So it's important that you draw your x and y axes, draw the point in the correct quadrant, and draw your triangle back to the x-axis with your reference angle and labeled correctly. Because now, what do I know about this triangle? I know this length is 1. I know this length is 4. And you're going to get really, really good at a squared plus b squared equals c squared for mental math. How long is the hypotenuse? 16 plus 1, 4 squared plus 1 squared is 17. So the hypotenuse will be the square root of 17. And now that we have our triangle labeled, we can figure out sine theta, cos theta, and tan of theta. Now, if we look at our reference angle, sine of our reference angle would be opposite over hypotenuse, 4 over the square root of 17. And because it's in quadrant 3, should sine be positive or negative in quadrant 3? Sine will be negative in quadrant 3. So we can use our triangle and our reference angle to figure out the ratio to be 4 over root 17. And then we need to use the cast rule to say, oh, and remember that sine is negative in quadrant 3. So I should write this as negative 4 over root 17. In grade 11, you would not be able to write your answer as negative 4 over root 17 because you have a square root on the bottom, and you always had to rationalize your denominator. In grade 12, they assume you know how to rationalize your denominator. And so if you leave it like this, they do not deduct marks for not simplifying. Okay? But you still need to know how to simplify it. If this was a multiple choice question, they might have the final answer as negative 4 root 17 over 17. Because you'd multiply top and bottom by square root of 17 to rationalize. But you do not need to do that. You could leave your answer with a square root in your denominator. Same thing with cos. Cos would be adjacent over hypotenuse, and cos is negative in quadrant 3, so it'll be negative 1 over root 17. and tan is opposite over adjacent, which you could leave as 4 over 1, or you could change it to just be 4, and tan is positive in quadrant 3, so it would stay like that. I'm going to just do my reciprocals in a different color. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Secant is the reciprocal of cos. And cotangent is the reciprocal of tan. And so when figuring out the ratios, what did we could remember that Chashikau or whatever. We're not going to do that. Instead, if cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, then to write the ratio for cosecant, I can just take the answer and flip it. Secant is the reciprocal of cos. Take the ratio and flip it. And tangent and cotangent are reciprocals, so take the ratio and write the reciprocal. So that part's not so bad for writing the other 3 reciprocal functions. Okay? The key thing is, can you draw the triangle correctly with the reference angle and then use SOHCAHTOA, sine, cos, and tan, and their definitions to write the ratios? And once, like, this question doesn't ask for it, but the next kind of questions would be to say, could you find out what the angle, the green angle is? What is angle theta? Well, you could use your grade, now that you've drawn this triangle, you could use your grade 10 math to figure out the reference angle. And then all you would have to do is 180 plus that reference angle to find out what the actual angle is in total. Okay, try number 8.